All right. Can anyone who's here hear me clearly? Testing, testing, just making sure. Am I coming through? Okay. Follow-up question. Do you hear me as if it's clear? As if it's coming out of this? Like if I'm really close to the mic? Or does it sound sort of garbled, like, the average person who has just the built-in laptop mic? Because, well, that's not the worst thing. Oh boy. Okay, that's beautiful. It's not the worst thing ever to have just a laptop mic audio, but it's something I like to avoid when I can. So, clearer than a radio show. That is, yeah, I know how some of those can get. Hello, Bear. Hello, Anthony. Hello, Mr. Blue. I'm glad you could make it. So, in case any of you who are here can't quite tell, I'm doing pretty well today, Anthony. Thank you very much. Just earlier, I mowed the grass, and that's basically the event of today. I hope y'all are doing well during all this coronavirus stuff. Me personally, I work in a call center that provides communication services to the hard of hearing. So my job has not been affected, and I've still been going to work. A lot of people have shifted to working from home for reasons. Mostly it would be too much Ethernet cable to have to run through my apartment. I am not working from home, but I do have a mask and stuff, and a lot of people have been able to work from home, so we aren't as badly affected, I would say, as some other people, other workplaces. I do know that for a fact that at least one person who does work at my center has gotten the virus, so gonna need to be extra careful. I've been pretty hygienic, particularly when this whole thing started. And it, as much as it would be nice, because on some days at work they allow you to, is that person okay? I don't know personally. I don't know a lot of the people who, I don't know a lot of the people at work. I just go there, I do my job, watch YouTube videos in the meantime. Haven't been able to do that for quite a while though, but just because during this whole thing, the need for communication has spiked. So I basically never get time off, can never call out early, because sometimes they let you do that if the call volume is low, but that's just not the case lately. So lately at work, I've been reading fan fiction. And let me tell you, it's been a while since I've regularly done that, and I forgot how much I miss it in terms of just the cool kinds of stories fans can come up with without any inhibitions from the corporate hierarchy. It's definitely not the scorched earth kind of apocalypse we expected whenever anyone says the word apocalypse. But it's definitely, this is the most in my entire life where things have felt different. No Bear, not the Kingdom Hearts one. The actual one I've been reading lately has been a Steven Universe fanfiction. I told you about that once. I did see an apocalypse-related post not too long ago, and this one actually shook me a little bit. It was about the preparers or the preppers or whatever you want to call the people who stockpile a bunch of food and ammunition and whatever. Basically, the idea that this isn't the apocalypse they were hoping for. They were hoping that there would be a scorched earth, no government, no authority, and then there would be a power vacuum that they can step into. And if anyone's seen any television show that depicts something like that, those aren't the kind of people you want leading. That they're going to make life very miserable for most people, frankly. Yeah, frankly, I hope that if there is an end of the universe, it would be the kind in which, almost think of it like the snap from Thanos. Just be like, except not Thanos, because in Avengers, we had time to see it happen and recognize it's happening. And I've just completely lost the sentence I was saying, so I apologize for that. Thank you, Mr. Blue. With Thanos, we had time to stop and realize what was happening, but if you snapped your fingers and then just, it's all gone, instant, no one knows any different, that would be... Ugh. Like, that might be freaky, but it might also be instantaneous enough. So if the universe were ever to end, that is the one I would hope for. Oh, dude. Canceled honeymoon, that's no good. But I hope you guys are safe and doing well and all that stuff. Let me scroll way back to the top to Tyler Fish, if you're still there. Will I review The Dark Crystal? That's... I'd have to really think about it, because while I admire the creature work done on that movie, the movie itself didn't quite hit me in a way that was super, super engaging or interesting. Of course, I do have friends who love to do their impression of the Skeksis, and which I guess is kind of the point. I have not seen the number 23. And I don't know if that's one that I would do, but I've done thrillers before. I've done, for example, iRobot, so it's definitely not off the table. Technically, nothing's off the table. There have been things that I've reviewed where I went like, I don't know. And then they turned out pretty good as far as videos are concerned. Yeah, honeymoons at home are great, if not that I have experience, but I've always thought the idea, because I've traveled before to, for example, the Oregon coast with some friends. And sometimes it's like, it's cool that we're having a vacation together in this scenic area, but in terms of stuff to actually do in this area, I mean, I don't know. We had to spend money on snacks and food and gas and time to get there. Got to do Smallfoot. Not gonna lie, that has crossed my mind. Anyway, I find that staycations sound appealing to a certain degree, with the exception of if you want to travel somewhere to visit someone out of state, because that's pretty much your only choice when it comes to hanging out with them. But staycations, it's basically just put aside. You can put aside less money and just have a week off from work. Of course, given the current climate, I would make the argument that we're sort of in a permanent staycation, except you can't go do all the fun things. I gotta tell you, it's been a weird thing not to go to the movies, not to go to the library to check out more movies and CDs and stuff, which I've been doing a lot, or graphic novels. Like, we should have seen Disney's Mulan remake by now. We should have seen, there's this one that was coming out called Promising Young Woman that interested me. We would have seen 007, No Time to Die. There was a Fathom Events anime movie called Children of the Sea, and I don't remember what it's about, but honestly, Fathom Events anime, like, I'm pretty much there. That's just what I do. And it's just strange not to have all these movies just suddenly not be at your fingertips. Tom Jackson, glad to see you here today, man. A So Bad It's Good movie. The real weird thing is about that is it's hard for me to go into a movie knowing it has a certain kind of reputation like that, just because I've always felt like I take a very straightforward approach to reviewing movies, and I'm not quite sure if that would be compatible with a So Bad It's Good sort of movie. On the flip side, there may be a couple of those that I'm thinking of right now that maybe I could do. One of them being Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, because that one was off the wall. Yeah, I got a friend who was really gung-ho for... He'd gotten me to watch the New Age James Bond movies. I haven't been a super fan of James Bond pretty much ever. But the Daniel Craig ones I've liked okay. I think my favorite is Skyfall, just because that was the one that felt like it gave us the most emotional type of connection to Bond as a character. All right, Mr. Blue, catch you later. I'm glad you were able to stop by for as short as you would. The Die Hard series. Not one I think I would immediately gravitate towards in terms of, oh yeah, I really want to talk about this one. I haven't seen most of them, but I sort of have a cultural awareness of them. Never say never, but not one that I'm thinking about right now. Will I review a Marvel? Well, Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance is technically a Marvel movie. I assume you mean Marvel Studios, though. There's certainly some potential, but I think there would have to be one that hit me in a certain way, be it good or bad. And I would like to point out that as far as Marvel Studio goes, I have not been properly disappointed by any of them thus far. The closest I would have to say would be The Incredible Hulk, which I thought was decent, didn't love it. And then maybe Iron Man 2 for falling short in a couple areas. But I've enjoyed Marvel Studios the whole way through. The hardest movie review I had to suffer through. Can you rephrase that question a little bit? Do you mean when watching the movie and doing the research on it, like, was it super difficult to even go about making a video about it? Or are you just looking for, like, the worst movie? And while you type that out, has there been a movie you want to review but have yet to get to? Dude, I have a whole document of movies that I've given even vague amounts of thought about. Not necessarily with those thoughts included, but I will say this about review experiences. Sometimes you get kind of those cartoon comical tears coming from me and Ashley when we're watching a new Swan Princess movie. Like, we'll just have to pause the movie and be like, ah! Because things can get crazy when we review those. I will take this time to mention to any of you who haven't seen it on my Facebook page or in my YouTube updates. Swan Princess 9 is pretty much a finished script. It's just social distancing that's keeping it from being filmed. Once things start to calm down there and Ashley and I feel safe getting back together again and hanging out and whatnot, that is something I'm going to try and produce as quickly as I'm able. Given that Swan Princess is obviously the series for which my channel is in the most demand, that's one I'm probably not going to play coy about, be surprising about. I'm just going to say, hey guys, Swan Princess 9 is on. Stay tuned. All right. Yes, I love Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's objectively one of the best pieces of entertainment I've ever seen. For any of you who may not have seen it, which there are only 10 of you here, but there's always the odds. It comes on Netflix May 15th. All 3 seasons of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Watch it if you have not seen the show. I feel strong in saying you will not regret that decision. Legend of Korra. I like Legend of Korra quite a bit. It takes the Avatar series in directions that I think made sense for evolving the world. For instance, pro-bending. That was probably one of the coolest world changes in terms of, as this world gains technology and the ability to do certain things without bending, what will people then use these abilities for? There's organized crime, of course, but then it's like a pro sport. I just found that idea really cool. And while I don't necessarily like that season 1 and season 2 are sort of emotional repeats of Korra's character arc, how they feel like they have to set her back to square one in order to then write a story where she develops a certain way. But the characters I still really enjoy, perhaps not quite as much as Avatar: The Last Airbender, but I enjoy them in different ways than I do those other characters. I could go on, but I'll just say, yep, I love Legend of Korra quite a bit. Do I think Captain Marvel was good? Yes, I do. I liked it. I thought Carol Danvers and Nick Fury had a really good chemistry together. I thought the way she was unapologetically not taking people's garbage throughout the movie was great. It certainly wasn't my favorite. Oh, I did love how it tackled the origin story through amnesia instead of, just putting the character in a situation and then they see some great injustice and then change course and become a hero. This is a person who had to sort of rediscover who they were through people that knew them and also through a couple people who didn't. So I like the movie. I hope that people stop getting super annoyed about it being overly feminist or something, because I just think it's entertaining. The worst movie I've seen, I would have to say a definite contender that isn't a Swan Princess film would be Son of the Mask. That was just... What am I expecting from Swan Princess 10? I won't tell you what I thought about Swan Princess 9. All I can say is that having seen how Swan Princess 9 ends, I'm definitely curious. High spirits. Here's me adding that to the document. CR 92. Yes, there is going to be a Swan Princess 10. That was confirmed some time ago. It's set to release this summer. I don't know if the Rona is going to affect that somehow, but I will get my hands on it as soon as I'm able. Hello, Tyler. I love Varric. Tyler, by the way, Varric is a character from Legend of Korra. You still need to watch that. Get the frick on it, my man. And don't even make your usual excuse. I know what you're going to say, but not going to fly. Yes, I like anime, and I have plenty that stick out to me. I grew up with the Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh anime, the first series, not so much later on. When I was in middle school, I got kind of into Inuyasha, but then I sort of let that fall by the wayside. I am making up for lost time now and watching it again. I'm up to episode 90 something at this point, and I really like that one, even if it can be a bit repetitive at times for how long it is and how their goal and how they go about pursuing it is a little straightforward. Anyway, I've mentioned before, this was years ago in my top 10 cartoons list, Death Note. That is still one of my all-time favorite anime. It's very suspenseful, has a unique concept, and engages the viewer in morality, in questions of morality the entire time. I love it. A couple more modern animes. Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid is definitely one. It does have a couple of elements that I can understand would squick people out, and I'd be lying if I said that they didn't squick me out a little bit too. But the core of what the show is, which is sort of just the idea of these dragons falling into this rather ordinary person's lap, or not even necessarily ordinary, because when you say she was just your average ordinary girl, you get a very different kind of image. Kobayashi is kind of a shut-in with not very many friends and isn't very socially educated. But then the way these characters come into her life and fill it with something that she didn't even know was missing before, I think it's really sweet. There are plenty of others. The Studio Ghibli catalog, my favorites from that are Arrietty, the one based off of The Borrowers, British dub. After seeing that, I can never go back to the American version. Porco Rosso, I've only seen once, but I remember really liking it. Kiki's Delivery Service, I watched that for the second time earlier this year with a friend of mine because I wanted to show it to him, because he was getting into anime and I liked that quite a lot. Another anime I saw that was really sad but also really heartfelt, Anohana, the flower we saw that day. Very sad, but very beautiful. It's good feels. Anyway, I think that's enough on that particular anime. Opinion of Digimon. Digimon, I watched because it meant a lot to a friend of mine, and there are plenty of things I like about it. I even get feelsy at certain moments. I do feel like the English dub kind of fills the audio space by constantly talking, and that can be a little bit overwhelming. But like when that show hits you, it hits you. What I'm assuming by season 2 you mean Digimon Adventure season 2. Pretty much the same as what I just said. Like, just that when it hits you, it works, and when it does, I love that. And then there are also moments where they're just kind of lol random about their sense of humor. And there's a certain charm to that, even if it is a little bit goofy. Favorite animated movie? Well, considering like more than half of what I watch sometimes is animated, really hard to narrow that down. Of the last 5 years, well, I gotta give a shout out to Into the Spider-Verse. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is just one of the best creative endeavors that I've ever seen. It's really cool. It does Spider-Man really well. It does many Spider-Man really well. And I know we're going to see more of it, and I can't wait. Is Frozen 2 better than Frozen 1? I do not think so. I also do not detest either movie. Frozen 2, probably a review of that coming someday, just because I did do Frozen 1 and I gotta continue. At least that's usually the rule I try to stick to. There will likely be a video on Frozen 2 someday. Dragon Prince. I have seen the first 2 seasons of that, and I'm digging it. I really like the chemistry that Callum has with Rhea is the name of the elf, right? It's been a few months since I watched season 2. I decided I would give myself a little bit of a breather, and then that breather became a lot longer than I wanted it to be. Oh, yes. Like, it's lucky enough that I'm even able to, in my review of The Lake House, I slipped in a clip from Ponyo, and I was mentally prepared to cut that if I needed to, but I figured let's get it through the first time and see what happens. And so far, so good. So, what is my quarantine video game? I'm glad you mentioned that, Tom, because when the video I'm currently working on is finished, you will know the answer to that question, because that's going to be part of the intro. I will tell you it's not Animal Crossing New Horizons, though. I do have a Nintendo Switch. I bought one semi-recently from someone on Facebook. Got a pretty good deal. Got the Switch itself and 3 games for $330. The thing is, I basically got it, and I haven't done jack with it yet because I own a lot of games, and part of me was thinking, oh, I need to play some of these games before I play other games, and it never works that way. I'm sure any of you who play games regularly know it never works that way. You just kind of hope you have time for them. Rayla. Okay. Aha. Well, two shows I've been watching recently. The anime Beastars and The Witcher, both Netflix shows. Those I'm considering my priorities. So even though I'm going through them at kind of a slower pace than I would like, but I'm gonna finish those, at least what they've got for us right now. And once I'm done with that, I'm probably gonna jump into something like The Dragon Prince. Well, we've been going at it for about half an hour with you guys just providing consistent conversation. So thank you for that. That's kind of broken me into this experience. When will we review? We. Is that an invitation, Tyler? You want us to review Open Season? If I'm not mistaken, Tyler, there are multiple sequels to Open Season. Why do you want to do that to us? Since I reviewed movies based on shows you love, such as Death Note or Last Airbender, would you consider doing Teen Titans Trouble in Tokyo or Steven Universe the movie? Steven Universe the movie? Probably not. Just because I sort of feel like so much of reviewing any individual part of Steven Universe feels like it requires a lot of context from previous parts of it to make everything fully. You need it to fully appreciate everything, and I'm not sure I could squeeze all of that into one reasonably length video. Teen Titans Trouble in Tokyo, I think I might be able to parse down a little more. Resident Evil CGI films. When you say CGI, do you mean... hang on just one second. Do you mean something like this? Because this was a PS3 game, and they made a CGI animated movie out of it. Or do you mean like the live actions? Well, I assume you mean CG animated movie, because if you meant live action, you probably just say live action. I guess that answers your question. I've never heard of them. I'm not really a Resident Evil person, mostly because I haven't played the games or invested very closely into any of that. What do I think about the idea of the Swan Princess? Well, I don't know what to think about Swan Princess 10, apart from what its potential could be, considering the way the ninth movie went and where it might go from there. So, so basically, I can only speculate, and I don't like doing a whole lot of preemptive thought. I like to go in for an experience open to the possibilities. Thank you, Anthony. That gives me the good feelings. You wouldn't hurt me. Well, thank you. I appreciate people not wishing pain upon me. Yes, I watched season 7 of the Clone Wars, and that's actually specifically the reason why I chose to do this stream on a Tuesday as opposed to the Monday, because I knew by then the last episodes would be out. And while I'm not going to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen them, I will say this. Well, I do kind of agree that this is some of the best Star Wars content in years. The fact that some of these events run parallel to Revenge of the Sith, you would think would be a bit spoilerish on account of the fact that, oh, we've seen Revenge of the Sith, so we know in general what is going to happen. It's not the same as experiencing it for the first time and seeing how these events in this particular area play out. And you know what? I actually think knowing what's coming with Revenge of the Sith, combined with the presentation shown in these episodes, knowing what's coming actually heightens sort of the stress that you're feeling inside. And beyond that, the presentation, the music, the way certain scenes play out, and the blocking and character decisions, it's just like, oh, give it time, because I definitely want to see a fix-it fan fiction in which someone says, what if everything didn't go to garbage in this scenario? What if things went okay? Particularly with the Clone Wars, because I would want that story to involve Ahsoka in some way. Horror movies. There is definitely... I've actually selected one that I'm hoping to have out in October. The plan is to review it alongside the guy who created my title cards and opening music, Relic. And that is all I will say. Child's Play. That would be the reboot, maybe. One, because the main reason I would want to go for it would be Mark Hamill is doing the voice of Chucky, and I love me some Mark Hamill. Also, it would probably just be the best to do that as opposed to the original, because I've seen the Nostalgia Critic review of Child's Play. So watching a remake, having not seen the original stuff apart from reviews, probably the best way to go into it with like a fair impression. I don't know if I'm going to do full-on reviews of each individual one, but I've definitely thought about doing the sequel trilogy before. Some kind of videos. I feel like having done the prequel trilogy, touching on the sequel trilogy is definitely something I wanted to do. And maybe even the original trilogy. Who knows? But I feel like Star Wars is something that's plenty talked about. So on the other hand, there's also just other material I might want to cover. What makes a good horror film? You are asking the wrong guy, Tyler. But, I mean, I guess through my eyes, well, I'm a fan of the Saw franchise, so what does that tell you? I will give examples, I guess, of horror movies I've seen that I think do a good job at what they do. The original Halloween, as well as the 2018 movie, or was it? I'm pretty sure it was 2018, which was also called Halloween, even if it was technically a sequel to the original film, because titles are total BS. Mark Hamill does make everything better, especially since I found out what a robust voice acting career he has. Like, it probably flipped my world on its head the first time I found out that Mark Hamill voiced the Joker. Like, Luke Skywalker is the Joker. What the hell is life anymore? Only to then have him continuously appear in other things. He was Firelord Ozai in Avatar. He played a bit part in the movie Joseph, King of Dreams. He was the Hanukkah zombie on Futurama. I think I think one of my favorite parts of just this era of Star Wars has been Mark Hamill back in the spotlight, because he just has so much fun being out there. I could listen to him talk about things for hours. I have done so. All right, since things have quieted down just a little bit, I do want to get a couple of just pieces of information out there. One, if any of you in this chat haven't already seen it through an update of mine on Facebook or on YouTube, Detective Reviews number 42, Shrek 2, while it is not available on YouTube, it is available to watch over on my Facebook page, facebook.com/Detective Steve. So if you're missing that video, it's over on Facebook. For some reason, DreamWorks is okay letting it live there, but on YouTube, that just won't fly. I don't know. I got maybe another couple announcements, but I'll save it. Black Ninja, I don't know how long you've been in the chat, so I'm not going to get weird about it, but I mentioned earlier, the Swan Princess 9 script is done. Ashley and I can't film together because of social distancing due to the coronavirus, but going to try and get that produced as soon as humanly possible. So once this dies down, I can pretty much flip the switch and go for it, because that's obviously a movie that most people who follow my channel want to see. I'm inclined to agree about Mark Hamill being the true Joker. That is to say, his portrayal of the Joker is the one that I felt is... It embodies... I'm not going to say the true spirit of the character like I'm some kind of expert. I'm going to say it embodies the spirit of the character that makes the most sense to me. The way he plays the Joker makes the most sense to me compared to most other people. That being said, I don't think I've yet seen a bad portrayal of the Joker. Joaquin Phoenix's was definitely very different, but that's because Joker was a very different kind of movie featuring the Joker. Thank you, CR92. I do try to work in things that are not garbage. And with that, I will segue into saying the next video I'm working on, Detective Reviews number 56, I filmed most of it, aside from the intro and outro, but I do have the review portions filmed. So I've started editing on that. This film is pretty garbage. Perhaps a little less garbage than I initially expected, but it's bad. And yet somehow writing a script for it became really hard. Maybe it was because the film was so garbage that I just, whenever the thought came up of putting the movie on and doing some work on the script, I'm just like, no harm, no foul, Black Ninja. It's all good. First time in your stream. What a coincidence. Same. Oh, wait. Hold up. No. I've streamed Battlefront 2 once as a test, and then Kingdom Hearts 3 the night it came out that one time. So I guess it's not my first time. Oh, God. What have I done? I have socially faux pod. This is not good. How much garbage? Let me put it this way. Let's say you had a really fancy vase. And then over time, that vase it faded, it got corroded, it was just not quite itself anymore. And then you shattered that vase before throwing it into the trash can. It might be a piece of garbage with fancy origins. That doesn't mean it's not garbage. Best Gravity Falls character. That is a really difficult question. I love... part of what makes Gravity Falls so great is that so many of the characters on the show are just great. I will say in terms of... I will say Grunkle Stan is probably the character whose overall story was the most interesting in terms of where he started versus where he finished. I was ugly crying at the finale of that show, man. What's more influential, Star Wars or Harry Potter? I feel like it would have to be Star Wars. If only because Star Wars is the thing I have obsessed the most on throughout my life. When I was young, I definitely wrote things that felt kind of in line with things that happened in Star Wars. And also when I was young, movies like Star Wars are what I watched. And I was like, oh boy, I can't wait until I understand kind of how these things tick so that I can know how to make good movies too. Little did I know, I would grow up and realize, oh, so that's why some people think these movies aren't that great. Garbage can be entertaining, but you pretty much have to watch it with friends. That's why particularly in the early days of my show, I would watch and review movies with cohorts because, like, watching bad movies is fun with friends. And also it just I think it gets your creative juices flowing more when you have someone to bounce off opinions and reactions. Like I'll take you back to this one time in 2013, where Tyler and I were at his house watching The Ant Bully, one of the higher viewed videos on the channel, and probably one of my favorite reviews in terms of what I was able to accomplish, though the intro and outro, looking at them now, are super cringeworthy. A product of me having a very vague idea of, it's like, oh, I'll just set up like a shift in my character so I can be more gritty detective, blah, blah, blah. Like just kind of setting that idea up and not knowing where I was going with the idea. Anyhow, Tyler and I watched The Ant Bully for probably 3 hours because we just kept pausing it and picking out something else outrageous about it. And that was fun, but like, because when you can get that kind of an explosive reaction from watching something, that's probably that's the material that makes for good YouTube videos. While I don't plan on reviewing any of the individual Harry Potter movies, I do have a couple of top 10 lists in mind. Specifically, how shall I say? It will be in relation between the books and how they stack up next to the movies. I believe it involves, there are let's say moments from the books that weren't adapted into the movies at all, or moments from the movies that were from the books but they were botched. Now, obviously, that means I'm going to have to parse through a lot of footage, and Warner Brothers is not as kind about copyright as certain other companies, though if I'm not mistaken, The Lake House was a Warner Brothers film, and that got through okay. Tyler, if you were going to move away because I made you stand in the corner, you would have moved away a lot sooner, I reckon. Not held that anger in for 6 years and then be like, oh, by the way, I'm moving. I've gotten at least one request for the Toy Story films before, and I think the most likely I would do is Toy Story 4. I think it would be fun in a way to commentate on, like, for The Sandlot. I absolutely freaking love The Sandlot. Doesn't mean there's not stuff you can say about it. And I'm sure looking at it closely enough, you could find the same for Toy Story, but I don't know. Either I have to find a way to make praising it more interesting, or I have to find a little more to nitpick about it. And being that Toy Story, the first trilogy of Toy Story movies, I consider to be my favorite in conjunction with The Sandlot. Between those 4 movies, I will never be able to pick a solid favorite. But who knows? We'll see. Lesser known independent animated movies. Lesser known is definitely one I've considered. Even though it got a mainstream release, I would say Smallfoot is a movie that surprised me and is one that I don't think as many people talk about as should be talking about it. There are some elements to it that are largely unremarkable, but there are a few moments in that movie hit really well for me. Asylum ripoff movies. I assume you mean the ones that are trying to be... They're trying to look on the surface level like a popular Disney movie, but really, no. Probably not. One, I don't feel like exposing myself to that particular variety of torture. And secondly, actually, I don't think I need a secondly. I don't feel like torturing myself in that particular way. Psych, there is a secondly. Secondly, like they might be obscure, but at this point, then their existence is well known and a lot of other YouTubers have done it. And obviously each reviewer has their own take, and I could be no exception to that rule. But nah. There is a certain part of me that wants to find a way to make videos not just in the linear nostalgia critic review style, but just put out videos that put out the word about certain things that I really like. But again, you have to make the idea of talking about how good something is more entertaining. Oftentimes, anger is a much more... It's a much more entertaining reaction than just being like, oh, this is so beautiful, I love it. Now, of course, I could go all manic fandom on you guys and be like, listen to me. Y'all are sleeping, and you need to wake up and smell this. Insert whatever I'm reviewing. Coraline? Maybe. Cool World? I'm pretty sure I saw the Nostalgia Critic review, so I think I would like to avoid that one, if only because I know something about it before going into it, even if it's not much. Tekken the anime film. There's an obscurity. Or at least I deem it as such because I've only heard of it just now. From another country? Oh, sure. Ah, a classic DreamWorks animation. I don't know if I would consider reviewing those particular movies. There is a 2D DreamWorks animated movie I have considered, though. That would be Sinbad. Don't ever review Feliday. You know, that is oddly specific that you would bring that up because I've gotten a request for that movie. And I would live to regret it. That's my life. I have seen things in the pursuit of this show that I have regretted seeing, and I'm still here. So now maybe it would be a special kind of regret. Well, Lady Theorist, can you list a couple of examples, maybe, of films from other countries that I might review? Just because I don't know exactly which ones. There are ones I've seen. I know I know anime technically qualifies as something from other countries, but and I have reviewed the first Death Note movie. I do hope to review the second one at some point, with or without my particular collaborator on that one, because I'm not sure if she's doing YouTube videos anymore. So if that's the case, I'll probably just tackle it myself. This is one of those movies that I just kind of picked up because, frankly, I can't remember why. Maybe I read the back of it, and I just said, "This could be neat. Maybe I like the title." But it's definitely one I want to watch. Let me check to see if that's actually on the request list somewhere. The request list, no. And actually not on the maybe I want to talk about it list either. But I mean, I've got it. Any Godzilla movie. Monster movies of that variety are not necessarily my favorite type. That being said, I have seen Gareth Edwards' Godzilla and Godzilla King of the Monsters. Had a pretty good time at both of those. Well, before I need the luck on reviewing it, I would have to find it first because, frankly, I'm not entirely sure. I may or may not have looked it up at one point, and I remember it being a little bit tricky to find. I have never heard of Where the Dead Go to Die, so warning received. Human Centipede. I'm afraid I have witnessed that particular film back in high school, I think it was. Freddy as Fro 7. Or FRO 7. Huh. Maybe. Later, Tyler. If he's not already gone. Claire Carey, hello, welcome to the stream, and I'm glad you like what you see. Is that pronounced Dionysos or Dionysus, like the actual Greek god, or is that how it's pronounced? When the Dead Go to Die is an illegal movie. Oh, that's... Storm Shadow. What... Which movies in particular, I guess, is what I would be asking in response to that. Red Shoe and the Seven Dwarfs. Now, if you know how to find that movie, you got to tell me, because I've seen that on Tumblr, and the idea of it sounds nice. And I've also just gotten really good reviews from it. A Return to Neverland. That's a Disney sequel, and Disney sequels pull in the views. So, probably. I suppose I'll take this time to update you guys a little bit on my current production schedule. There is the one that I'm working on right now that I hope to have out before the end of the month. Hopefully in the middle of the month if I can work fast enough. There is another movie that I'm going to watch soon. It's one that I got 2 requests for, so I figure that's probably one that would be in demand. It will be... It's one that most of you have probably definitely heard of. Sean Reviews, hello. The Death Note live-action movie sequel is probably one that I'm going to review. Not the Japanese one, not the not the American one, because the American one. Thoughts on the Rise of Skywalker. I will tell you, my initial reaction to the film, having not seen it a second time since theaters. Well, actually, you could probably make of that what you will. The fact that I wasn't tempted to go back into theaters to watch this particular one. I saw The Force Awakens 3 times in theaters. I saw The Last Jedi twice. Rise of Skywalker, I just watched the one time. I definitely need to watch it again at some point, because that first viewing was just... It was overwhelming, just with the amount of stuff. I have friends who did not care for it that much. There were moments about it that I like quite a bit. Like some people will probably... I imagine some people have gagged at the ending scene a little bit. I think there's something to it that maybe not as many people... I'm not saying that it was that deeply buried of a meaning, but it was one that maybe wasn't considered quite as strongly, and that much about it I liked. Hook with Dustin Hoffman. Another film that was reviewed by the Nostalgia Critic, and because I liked that video and probably watched it a bunch of times, I think at this point I consider myself too familiar with the film to have a fresh reaction to it. So doing a review wouldn't be... I wouldn't do it justice. Then again, there are movies that... like Star Wars, obviously, I've seen, where I go back to them and then look at them differently. So never say never, I suppose. But Hook is one that I feel would be not as likely. Mulan Live-Action. I think that one is definitely a good candidate, because it's purported that the approach to this one is a lot different from the animated one, a lot they're coming at it from a very different creative direction. And because of that, it could definitely be, I don't know how much I'd compare and contrast between that and the animated movie, as much as think how well it hits. The Last Jedi is pretty long, so I don't blame you. I can't help but feel like starting The Last Jedi off where the Force Awakens left off, The Last Jedi picked up, like, immediately. And while The Force Awakens ending is exactly the kind of thing where it's like, okay, I want to know what happens immediately after we're done here, but maybe I would have gone about it in a different direction. Not as much of a cliffhanger, a little more of a, like, let's say, for example, Rey offers the lightsaber and we actually see Luke taking it and igniting it. That being said, I may be one of the people who was a fan of what they did with Luke in The Last Jedi. It was definitely surprising. Not 100% perfect execution, but what is. But the fact that they took him down a darker, more somber path at first, not in terms of allegiance to the Force or being evil or anything, but just being defeated, I felt like that brought interesting things to the idea of the character. And I do only wish that perhaps The Rise of Skywalker had not gone so far back in the other direction. Jumanji is a pretty good film. And you know what? So are the 2 sequels that they've got out. Definitely not in the same way. Like, this is very much a we know the concept of Jumanji, and now we're just going to apply it differently and make a new series of movies. But they are entertaining. I will say I was super surprised when I found out, hold up, the first one made how much money? Like, maybe it's because of the cynical culture we live in where everything's a reboot and people are sick of reboots. I didn't expect Jumanji to be the thing that would just get everybody out there. It was crazy. All right, Storm Shadow. I've copy-pasted your list to think more about later, but I'll just give it a quick run-through now. Disney's Smart House. Maybe. I definitely remember that from when I was younger, and it was a little crazy. My Little Pony, the movie 2017. Probably not. I didn't watch Friendship as Magic, so I don't feel I would. Maybe there's something to reviewing it because of that. That would be worthwhile as a perspective, but it's one of those things where I kind of feel like you shouldn't judge a movie if understanding of other material would enhance the experience. I'm very much a fan of. It's like people who would try to play Kingdom Hearts 3 without having played the other games, when everyone knows what a convoluted 4-dimensional web the Kingdom Hearts story is. There's just it. Even for someone who's played all the games, it still doesn't always make sense. Iron Giant, probably not. Kung Fu Panda. I'm going to say never on that one. The Core. A science fiction disaster movie drilled to the center of the earth. You know, I may have seen that at some point, as oddly enough, it might have been when I was in middle school. The Lego Movie. Interesting. I mean, I love the Lego Movie. Whether I would want to make a video about it, I don't know. Goosebumps. Not as acquainted with the series, but I have seen a review on it. Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. That could potentially... You know what? I have thought on more than one occasion about making a video on Scooby-Doo spin-offs, like Scooby-Doo meets the Boo Brothers. Zombie Island could definitely be a candidate in that regard. Thoughts on Kingdom Hearts 3? As far as gameplay and making the worlds bigger and more explorable, presentation-wise, Kingdom Hearts was stuck graphically in the PS2 era for so many years. And then to have the little taste that we got in Birth by Sleep 0.2, A Fragmentary Passage, and then to get Kingdom Hearts 3 as just it went from here to here. It was jarring, but it was also just really cool to see Kingdom Hearts looking that shiny and modern. The story, well, I'll say the first time I went through the game, I got through it in like 4 days. I ugly cried for like 10 minutes at the end. Going through it a second time, the cracks show a little more easily, but like it's hard to dwell too much on that. I really like to hold on to just the idea of what it was like going through it for the first time, and I had a blast. Nostalgia Critic reviewed Zombie Island. Was this sometime in the last couple years? Because I don't know if I imagine you guys would be familiar with the Change the Channel controversy. I will say I am on the side of the fence that decided I'm not watching Channel Awesome stuff anymore after that. Nostalgia Critic also reviewed Swan Princess, but guess what? If I reviewed Swan Princess first, just because he's getting more views on it doesn't mean I'm not going to throw my hat in the ring. I've seen the live-action Dora the Explorer. A friend of mine actually has requested I review that movie, and frankly, I don't see why not. In fact, Anthony, I am going to add your name next to that. And with that, Dora officially joins the things that have 2 requests on them list. The Fearless 4. No, I have not heard of that, but I'm gonna throw it here anyway to look at it later. Rise of the Guardians. Now, that's a film I've not seen in a long time. Since theaters. So that is definitely one I wouldn't mind dragging back into the public consciousness. That's a lot of questions, Sean reviews. Favorite characters in Kingdom Hearts. I think my favorite general experience is Riku. I think his story tends to have some of the more interesting emotional points. That applies to Chain of Memories, where he had sort of his own story after you beat the main game as Sora. And then the same in the 3DS game Dream Drop Distance. Like, Riku has sort of that angst going on inside him from his past. So I think that makes him a little more interesting than Sora. Although, like, that first time you're going through the world, Sora is more or less the player. Like, beholding, it's like, oh man, I'm in the world of Tangled, or the world of Frozen, or the world of Tarzan. It's just like, wow, look at all this. This is crazy. We're just running around in these Disney movies. Even if the stories have to be so tightly regulated that you can't do anything terribly interesting with these characters, because we got to stay true to Disney canon. Because let me tell you, if people could write official Kingdom Hearts story in as compelling a way as certain fan fictions have, Kingdom Hearts as a game, as an experience, would be on another level. Other than Death... Okay, if we went through all the anime that I've watched, it would be too much. I will say I haven't seen Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, or the original Full Metal Alchemist. That is one of the classics that's kind of slipped through the cracks with me. I've heard Brotherhood is more or less a reboot of the original story, but a little shorter, less filler, better, depending on who you ask. But of course, even though I haven't really watched Full Metal Alchemist, I do know that one scene. You know the one. That's right. David Gallagher and Brittany Snow were in Whisper of the Heart, and that is another one of my favorite Disney movies. And I'm glad you brought that up. That gives me an opportunity to give you one of my hot takes, as the kids call it. Granted, and question it all you want, but it's the truth. I never heard the song Country Roads until this movie. And then I heard the John Denver version sometime after. I gotta tell you, the way... Maybe it's because I have characters to associate the song with. And when I think of the song, I think of these characters and their story. I like the version of Whisper of the Heart that... Here I go gushing about this movie, and I can't even remember the main character's name. I think it's like Shizuku. Anyway, Shizuku and Seiji on the violin, Shizuku doing the vocals. I like that version of Country Road better than the John Denver version. There, I said it. You're very welcome, Hannah. I'm glad to hear that my videos can have this kind of impact for some people. It's not quite the same as, like, I mean, who doesn't like to be told that something that you do makes someone smile? That's an awesome feeling. I see you, Russell Young. Which Tarzan you talking about? Disney's? If my glasses accidentally fell off. On this, that would be, I want to say disaster, but whatever. What's the sitch? Okay. Leave me alone, please. Regarding the glasses thing, I don't know exactly how it would go down, but someday I reckon there will be a moment, loosely character based, if I ever do anything narrative on this channel again, in which I would in which my glasses would come off. I don't right now I can't imagine exactly what kind of a moment that would be. I love the soundtrack for that movie. I love it so much. I would like to take this opportunity not to ask for more review requests, just because at this point I do have plenty. Have I seen Your Name? Yes, love it. Both versions, Japanese and English. As I was about to say, I would like to take a moment just because it's something that makes me think. For the number of years, my most popular videos have more or less followed the Nostalgia Critic formula, just with the fact that I talk about plot holes specifically tacked on to the end of it. So I guess I would like to know, are there any other sort of video types that you guys would like to see from me that I haven't made? Or is there a way I go about doing things in my videos that you think with maybe just a nudge in a certain direction might make them hit better for you? Because so far we seem to have a crowd that's just like, hey man, love what you do, but I appreciate constructive criticism if it can push me in a more, how shall we say, a direction that I can call more my own. I've thought before about how I could potentially make videos that don't follow the formula of detective reviews. Granted, I've tried a few, not as many views on some of those videos, unfortunately, but that doesn't mean I don't want to try new things sometimes. So if you guys have any suggestions for something new I could try that's not necessarily just review this specific thing, I'd love to hear it. One question I've gotten a couple of times is maybe review a TV show, and the video would definitely have to come out differently if I did that. Labyrinth. You know, that is actually my best friend Tyler's wife's, one of her just absolute favorite movies. Like, wore out the VHS type of favorite. She really loves David Bowie. And and that particular movie, but a big part, David Bowie. Hmm. Another video format I've been thinking of trying is video essays, in which not necessarily about an individual movie, but maybe more so about a topic. For instance, one that's come through my head before is the idea of media as a one and done sort of affair. Because there are a lot of things that we get nostalgic for and come back to over and over again. But also, I find myself pursuing so many new things I haven't experienced before, that like some of my nostalgia comes from limitations. Like, you only have so many games on your PlayStation 2, so of course I'm going to play Kingdom Hearts like 3 times. Now I've got like 80 something games that I haven't even finished. So why should I go back and play these games that I've played before? Yeah, they're fun, but what about all these new experiences? And the same could go for TV shows and movies. So that's a topic I've considered touching on. Is a video essay on something like that something you guys would be interested in seeing? I have thought about reviewing game CR92. Specifically, I wanted to do a video about the Wii U just because I think that's a console that, while it wasn't successful, it gets a bad rap. Thank you for showing up today and for all of your questions and conversation starters. It's been great. All right. If there are any stragglers with anything on the brain you want to get off your chest, I'm thinking I'm going to hop off here any moment. So get those last few bits of information or etc. out, and we can maybe talk about that. Okay, Hannah, maybe I will look into some shows. Kiz, I do not play Minecraft, so I am not at liberty to be able to answer this question. For the record, I don't have anything against Minecraft. Just doesn't really seem like my thing. Live action. Oh. That's one of those things where I don't have, outside of perhaps Team 4 Stars Dragon Ball Z Abridged, I don't have as much of an attachment to Dragon Ball. That being said, could be potential in the sense that I'm not as versed in Dragon Ball, but I actually am. Actually, that's probably not fair. In high school, I did actually try watching proper Dragon Ball Z. I did get partway through Frieza. Some of it just didn't hit with me as much as I would have liked it to. As for doing Dragon Ball the movie, that's one of those where it's like, it's so well known and so easy a target. Why bother? And I know I did Last Airbender, but like that was kind of the one that like the Star Wars prequels are movies that related to something that meant a lot to me. So it felt more right reviewing those. Well, as much as I would like some constructive criticism, I certainly won't refuse a, hey man, I like your videos, what can I say? Because that's pretty cool. Hello, Demas. Everyone give a big hey to David Demas from And You Thought It Was Safe. The weird thing about the Swan Princess series is that, well, apart from just being so many, they've apparently gone far enough in doing what they do that they're actually trying to test the waters for doing a live action remake of the very first film. And that would be something. I can only wonder, though, because the first film was okay, so it's not as though a live action remake of it would be the worst. If I'm being perfectly honest, in the early days of my show, there were some movies that perhaps I was a lot meaner to than I should have been. Sky High and Robots come to mind. So, and Swan Princess may very well have been one too. Like, it has some flaws, but it's a solid movie overall. The stories are kind of nonsense, if only because the fact that it's CG I could get over, because after watching enough of it, you're just like, this is what it is now, and it doesn't shock you as much. Like, the first time watching Swan Princess Christmas, oh boy. But I don't know, like, the sixth one is probably the weirdest as far as story twists go. Just because it started with maybe the idea of wanting to pursue a character story, and then it just shifted into a couple of different other unrelated stories and never really got back to that first plot point. The sixth one was very special. Do I play Pokemon? I have played Pokemon. My very first video game, the Sega Pico aside, if any of you remember that, my very first game was Pokemon Red version. It took me a few years because I was a dumb 5-year-old to actually figure out how to get through it. But I did eventually. And I have since played up through Gen 6, and I've kind of dropped off since then. My interest in Pokemon waxes and wanes. It's been waned for a really long time. Definitely not as much as when I was younger. There is another Swan Princess. Right now they have 9, and then there's going to be a 10th movie. Favorite Star Wars? Nostalgically speaking, I have to say Revenge of the Sith. That came out when I was 12. That was like peak Star Wars fandom for me. It was such an event to finally see the events come full circle, and just the sheer imagery the sheer amount of significant events that took place in Revenge of the Sith. Like, there's a reason it felt so cool. Just seeing these kinds of story points that you'd only heard whispered of before, and now they're coming to fruition. And honestly, I would call certain moments of Revenge of the Sith adequately dark. So yeah, it may have some of the weaknesses the prequels have, but Revenge of the Sith is probably one of my favorites. But if I'm gonna bring the objective opinion, well, that's kind of a contradiction. If I'm gonna be a little more objective about it, I'm gonna say Episode 4 is probably one of, if not the top movie, just because that's it's a simple adventure movie to digest, and yet there's also a lot of richness to it, and it's just fun to watch. Like, pop in Episode 4, after a while you're just like having a good time. Do more research videos digging into the background of the original stories of the movie. Now, do you mean that as like a compound to detective reviews in which I just talk a little bit more about the background within those videos itself, or doing whole separate sets of videos in which I just have a different emphasis? The first Land Before Time. You know, it has been long enough that I haven't. There are certain parts of that movie, obviously, that stay with you. In fact, I think I was reminded of it a little with Bambi 2 and Bambi flashing back to his mother. I think it's been long enough since I've seen Land Before Time that I could potentially review that one. Now, if you have the follow-up question of, are you going to review the sequels? Do you know how many freaking sequels there are? Last I heard, it was like 17 or 14, or it's a lot. Way too many. If I was going to do them, they would have to be much shorter than my usual videos. Otherwise, I would just completely drain my time. It's true, but there is a certain level of balancing the fact that I do present myself as a detective. My goal was to emphasize plot holes in that regard, but you are right in terms of digging deep. But then there is also just the usual YouTube game of, you want to make sure your videos are engaging people, and sometimes to do that, if you go for a while, you've got to really try and parse down to the essentials. And especially since I'm doing it nostalgia critic style most of the time, you got to get to the really base essence of some of this stuff. But you're not incorrect. So I suppose that would be one way, is if I could potentially find a way of talking about movies differently, which I definitely could. I would just have to do some serious recalibration of my brain. I mean, I used to have a variety of different things, but partially on the amount of views, partially on the amount of effort it went into making them. Some of the other formats I've gone for have fallen by the wayside. Alrighty, well, we are at an hour and 45 minutes, and I think that I think that's just about all the steam I've got for today, but with the fluctuating numbers, I've had probably at least 15, 16 different individuals here today. So I thank you guys for showing up to this. It was good talking with you. I hope you're doing pretty okay in general. I know things are really crazy right now with the world again, with the Rona. Oh, Barbie movies. I've talked with my friends about that, and there's probably a few candidates. Crossovers. I haven't thought of. I've rarely approached people for crossovers. David DeMoss is an exception because he and I became acquainted separately, and then after that, we got like, hey, maybe we should do a video, and then we did, and it was cool. One Barbie movie that was talked about is Barbie in Swan Lake, which I think would be a worthy target, if only because as a good comparison to, I remember mentioning this all the way back in the original Swan Princess review, that Barbie Swan Lake was a more accurate representation of the ballet than Swan Princess was. Well, that would be a heck of a thing. Suddenly, this guy in a suit and tie reviews Barbie movies and gets internet famous. Yeah, imagine that. Use the music from the ballet that you're adapting a story from. How about that? Princess and the Pauper. I love the Prince and the Pauper general story idea, so that could be. Oh, dang, 1 a.m. Yeah, definitely get to sleep then, man. Alrighty, well, that'll be all I do for today. Again, thank you guys for showing up. It was nice doing this. I'm probably going to get something to eat, but then I'm going to... Again, Detective Reviews number 56. I'm editing it. I have a little bit more of it to film, but plenty of editing to do. So, good night. Good luck in any endeavors you may be pursuing at this time in your life. And I hope you guys enjoy the next video I put out.